I held the folder in my hands, and everything I thought I knew collapsed. My fingers trembled. The pages shook. For weeks, I'd told myself I was different, that a billionaire had seen something in me no one else ever bothered to notice. That love could show up in a room full of power and still be real. But the paperwork in my hands told a different story. My name was on a list dated 6 months before I ever got that invitation, before I ever stepped into his estate, before he ever looked at me like I mattered. I wasn't a coincidence. I was a selection, and the person who helped put me on that list had been sleeping 3 feet away from me the whole time. Welcome back to Empire of Lies. If you're new here, you're in the right place for stories that hit hard and stay with you. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this story doesn't just twist, it detonates. Now, rewind with me. Back to the moment a single envelope slid under a dorm room door and turned a quiet scholarship student's life into a controlled experiment. This is The Weight of Silk and Secrets. Late afternoon light leaked through the thin dorm curtains, turning my desk into a small island of warmth in a room that always felt slightly too cold. I was hunched over a stack of textbooks with finals 3 weeks away, my scholarship riding on grades that couldn't slip even a fraction. My laptop hummed, my pen moved, my stomach stayed tight. Then I heard it, a soft scrape, paper against linoleum. I turned as an envelope slid under my door and stopped near my laundry basket like it had been delivered by a ghost. No name, no return address, nothing. I picked it up carefully. The cardstock was thick, expensive. The seal was gold and embossed, catching the light when I tilted it. My first instinct wasn't excitement. It was suspicion. Nobody sent me things like this, not unless they wanted something. I turned it over twice, as if an answer might appear if I looked hard enough. Nothing. Just weight. Texture. Intent, like someone had taken their time choosing the paper, the seal, the exact moment I would be alone. My finger slid under the edge of the flap, and the second I broke the seal, I felt it, an invisible line being crossed. What is that? Celestine's voice came from behind me, smooth, sharp, perfectly controlled. She stood in the bathroom doorway with a towel wrapped around her hair and a robe that looked too elegant for a dorm room. Celestine Montgomery always looked like she belonged somewhere better than where she was. She'd been my roommate since the housing office rearranged assignments at the start of spring term. The official explanation was space limitations. The unofficial reality was that everything about her life came with invisible hands guiding the outcome. Celestine was polished in a way I could never fake. Her nails were always done. Her clothes always fit like they'd been made for her. She moved through campus like she owned the sidewalks. We weren't enemies. We laughed together sometimes. We shared snacks. We traded small complaints about professors. But there was a quiet competition that lived under everything, whether either of us admitted it or not. Even in our room, the imbalance showed. Her bed had the best light. Her desk had the outlet that actually worked. Her perfume lingered like a signature. She walked toward me and stopped when she saw the seal. Her eyes narrowed, just for a second. Then her expression snapped back into place. "Open it," she said. I hesitated. Celestine leaned closer, her voice lowering. "Open it, Zarina, right now." I pulled the paper free, and beside me, Celestine went very, very still. The card inside was thick and cream-colored, the lettering pressed into it like a promise. "You are cordially invited to an evening of possibility at the Blackwood estate. Cocktails and conversation, Friday, the 15th of May, 8 o'clock. My brain tried to reject the words. "Blackwood," Celestine whispered. "As in Thayer Blackwood III. Of course I knew the name. Everyone did. Blackwood Industries had its fingerprints on everything. Shipping, real estate, medical research, tech investments. Thayer Blackwood was the heir who became CEO too young and too fast, the man the business press couldn't stop talking about, even when he stopped showing up in public. And then there were the rumors, a yacht accident, a storm, his parents gone. his brother Ransom surviving, whispers that the official story was incomplete, that money had smoothed the sharp edges off the truth. My throat tightened as I read the final line at the bottom of the card. Your presence is requested, not required, but those who attend often find their futures illuminated. I stared at that phrase. Requested, not required. It sounded polite. It sounded harmless. But it also sounded like someone had already decided what would happen if you said yes. What does that mean? I asked. Celestine didn't answer. She watched my face instead, like she was measuring how deep the hook had set. I should have noticed that. I should have noticed how quickly her breathing changed, how her fingers flexed, like she wanted to snatch the card from me and fold it into her pocket. But all I could think was one impossible question. Why me? We have to go shopping, Celestine said, already moving toward her closet. Now. Wait. I held up the invitation. This is strange. I don't know anyone connected to him. I don't know why I'd be invited to something like this. Celestine turned, smile bright but eyes sharp. That's exactly why you need me. Events like this have rules, dress codes, conversation codes. You don't want to walk in there looking like you don't belong. Her excitement had an edge to it, not just enthusiasm, ownership. Our chance, she added, like she couldn't help herself. I blinked. She waved it off. If you win, we win. People notice who's near you when you're rising. It sounded supportive. It sounded friendly, but it also felt like a claim. Before I could untangle that feeling, she was pulling me toward the door, her energy sweeping me forward. I grabbed my jacket and followed. Behind us, the invitation sat on my desk, gold seal broken, the words waiting like a quiet dare. I didn't notice that Celestine never asked why the envelope had my name inside instead of hers. I didn't notice how quickly she stopped looking surprised and started looking prepared. I noticed nothing, and that was my first mistake. The boutique smelled like clean perfume and money that never worried about rent. Celestine moved through racks like she belonged there, greeting the sales staff by name, laughing softly while they brought her options like offerings. This one, she said, holding up a gold dress that shimmered under the lights. This is power. She didn't glance at the price tag. I did by accident. $1,400. She handed it over like it was nothing. Investment, she said when she caught my expression. Networking. You spend money to make money. She said it with the casual confidence of someone who had never had to stitch a torn hem instead of buying a new dress. My father's card, she added, like it was a punchline. I drifted toward the door, feeling like I might break something just by standing too close. I'm going to check the shop down the street, I said. Celestine's smile tightened. Sure, sometimes simple is appropriate. 3 blocks away, the consignment shop was cramped and quiet, sandwiched between a laundromat and a bakery that sold discounted pastries after closing. And there it was, emerald green, fitted bodice, flowing skirt, elegant in a way that didn't need a designer label to prove itself. $87. There was a small tear near the hem. I bought it anyway. That night, I sat on my bed with an old sewing kit open beside me and fixed the tear with careful stitches, like my hands had been trained for this exact kind of survival. Because they had. My grandmother's sewing kit was older than my mother. Worn leather case, needles lined up like tiny soldiers, spools of thread that smelled faintly like storage drawers and history. When I was 12, I sat on the floor of her Queens apartment while she mended a neighbor's dress, the ceiling fan clicking overhead like a metronome. Lola, tell me again, I begged. She smiled without looking up. I was 19 when I left the Philippines. I had $60, a suitcase held together with rope, and a prayer I repeated so many times it became part of my heartbeat. She arrived with nothing that mattered to the people who judged value in bank balances. And then she worked. 30 years cleaning houses, scrubbing floors for families who never learned how to pronounce her name, folding laundry that smelled like expensive detergent, polishing things she could never afford, but she saved. Every penny, every dollar. She put 2 kids through college with money earned one long day at a time, And when I was old enough to understand what it meant to be underestimated, she pressed that sewing kit into my hands. "They will try to make you forget," she told me. "They will try to make you feel small, like you come from nothing." Her eyes were steady, unshaken. "Don't let them," she said. "You come from people who build, people who fix, people who don't need permission to survive." That night in my dorm, I tied off my last stitch and held the green dress up to the light. It wasn't expensive, but it was mine. And it was proof. The night of the party, the dorm bathroom felt too small for how fast my heart was beating. I slipped into the emerald dress and smoothed the fabric over my hips, checking the stitching one last time like it could protect me from whatever waited beyond campus. Behind me, the door opened. Celestine stepped out, looking like she belonged on a private yacht, gold dress, flawless makeup, hair arranged like a promise. She looked powerful. She looked untouchable. "You look..." I started. "I know." She adjusted a diamond earring and smiled at herself. Then, her eyes met mine in the mirror. "Green looks good on you. Very fresh." I couldn't tell if it was kindness or a quiet insult wrapped in silk. With Celestine, the truth always had layers. "Ready?" she asked. I nodded. Two women heading toward the same estate. One carrying confidence like a weapon, the other carrying hope like a risk. The Blackwood estate rose above the Massachusetts coastline like a statement carved into land. 17 acres of manicured grounds ended in cliffs, where the ocean hit rock with a steady violence that made the air taste like salt and warning. The house was all glass and clean lines, minimalist luxury so expensive it didn't need to announce itself. The kind of wealth that said it didn't care who was impressed. A line of cars waited, Bentley, Rolls-Royce, something Italian that looked like it moved even while parked. A valet opened my door. My legs felt unsteady the second my heels hit stone. Inside, 200 guests drifted through bright rooms with quiet music and practiced laughter. Senators, tech founders, people whose faces had been printed on glossy covers. I took a champagne flute from a passing tray just so my hands would have something to do. Celestine disappeared into a circle of familiar faces, collecting greetings like currency. I stood alone near a wall of glass, watching the crowd move like a world I wasn't raised for. The air smelled like expensive perfume and sharp liquor. I caught people looking at me, then looking away, and I did what I always did when I felt out of place. I searched for exits. "You look like you're calculating the emergency exits." The voice was low and amused. I turned, and my breath caught. Thayer Blackwood wasn't the glossy magazine image. In person, he looked tired in a way no tailor could hide. Shadows under his eyes, tension in his shoulders like he carried a whole company on his spine. But his gaze, grey, deep, sharp, held me like he was reading something written under my skin. I admitted. The one behind the flowers seemed promising. His mouth tilted. "That one leads to the kitchen. You'd be trapped between catering staff and a refrigerator the size of a small apartment. Still better than small talk about yacht maintenance." He actually laughed, short, surprised, real. "Thayer," he said, offering his hand. "Zarina." His handshake lasted 1 second too long, warm enough to feel personal in a room built for performance. "The profiteroles are worth it," he said. "Avoid the chocolate fountain entirely. It's a disaster waiting to happen." "Noted." He nodded toward the dessert table. "Walk with me. I want to see if you're brave enough to commit to pastry in public." I followed, and I felt the room notice. Whispers shifted. Heads turned, and then pretended they hadn't. And Thayer Blackwood, billionaire, CEO, myth, kept his attention on me like the crowd didn't exist. By the window, dessert plates in hand, he said it like he was stating a fact. "I know who you are." My stomach tightened. "I'm a student. I don't know why I'm here." "The Singapore port analysis," he said. "Container routing optimization. You cut delay projections by 37%. My throat went dry. That work was mine, and my supervisor had taken credit. "How do you know about that?" "I know what happens in my company." His eyes narrowed. "And I know Richard Chen didn't write it." I could have lied. I could have protected myself. But my grandmother's voice rose like a spine inside me. Don't let them make you small. No, I said, steadying my breath. He didn't. I did. Thea's smile was slow, dangerous, like he'd been waiting to see if I would claim what I'd earned. Good, he murmured. I like the truth. And something in me lit up at the way he said it. Like truth wasn't just a value, but a weapon. He set his plate down. Walk with me, Zarina Mendoza. I want to show you something. The way he said my name made it feel like a choice, not just an identifier. Around us, the party kept moving, but I felt the shift, people noticing, watching, filing it away for later gossip. Across the room, I caught Celestine's eyes. Her champagne froze halfway to her mouth. Her expression wasn't surprise. It was calculation. I think people are watching, I whispered. People always watch, Thea said, offering his arm. The question is whether you let them decide your life. I placed my hand on his sleeve. Warm fabric, solid presence. He led me away from the noise and into something private, into his world. And I didn't understand yet that I was stepping into a plan written long before I ever received that envelope. A panel in the hallway slid open to reveal a private elevator. Thea pressed his thumb to a scanner. A soft beep. The doors opened. He stepped in like this was routine. I stepped in like I was trespassing. We rose in silence. When the doors opened, the air changed. Cooler, quieter, rich with the scent of old paper and polished wood. 3 stories of books surrounded us. Leather spines, gold lettering, rolling ladders on brass rails, soft lighting that made the room feel like it existed outside time. My father's collection, Thea said, his voice subdued. Millions spent on books. Did he read them? A short, humorless laugh. He loved the idea of being well read. He loved what it looked like. His gaze drifted to a worn paperback that didn't belong among the rare editions. The Great Gatsby, I said. I've read it 43 times, he replied quietly. My mother used to read it aloud when I couldn't sleep. He ran his fingers over the battered cover like it was a relic. In his father's monument to status, Thea kept the one book that was about longing, about wanting something you can't buy. And suddenly, he felt less like a billionaire and more like a man carrying grief in expensive clothes. I sat on a leather sofa and tried to steady my breathing. Can I ask you something? I said. You can ask. I might answer. Why invite interns to your birthday party? His eyes held mine. I wanted to see who would come. And who would stay. Stay for what? For the moment after the performance ends. He leaned forward slightly. Most people leave before the real conversation starts. I swallowed. And you think I stayed? You did. His voice softened. You didn't chase connections. You didn't collect selfies with important people. You stood by the glass looking like you were wondering if you'd made a mistake. Heat crept into my cheeks. You were watching me. I watch everyone. It's survival. He paused, studying me. But you were different. Either you're genuinely curious or you're very good at pretending. I don't pretend, I said, honest before I could stop myself. I don't know how. That landed. I saw it in his face. The surprise, the relief, the way something inside him loosened. Honesty, he murmured. I don't get much of that. He stood, and when he stepped closer, the air changed again, tight, charged, almost too quiet. You fascinate me, Zarina Mendoza, he said, voice low. And I don't say that to people. My heart hammered. Why not? Because fascination makes you reckless. And what does it make you want? His gaze dropped to my mouth for a heartbeat. Then his phone buzzed. Again and again. The moment snapped like a thread cut too fast. He looked at the screen, and his expression hardened into CEO calm. I have to take this. He turned away, voice clipped, speaking in fragments I couldn't fully catch. Deadlines, numbers, a crisis that sounded like it spanned continents. When he came back, the softness was gone. There's a car waiting, he said. I'll make sure your roommate gets home safely. My pulse still raced, but now it was confusion mixed with longing. Thayer. Monday morning, 8:45. His thumb hovered over the scanner. There's a projections meeting on the 40th floor. I blinked. That meeting is for senior directors. And you. His eyes locked on mine. Don't be late. The elevator doors closed, and he was gone. I stood alone in his library, 3 stories of expensive silence, feeling like the world had shifted while I wasn't looking. My phone was a mess of notifications. Celestine, where are you? Answer me. Zarina, this isn't funny. I typed, on my way. The staff escorted me down. A black car waited outside, engine purring softly. I slid into the back seat and stared out the window as the estate faded behind me. I tried to arrange my face into something normal. Tried to tell myself this was just a party, just a conversation, just a lucky break. But my body didn't believe that lie. And neither did the messages piling up on my screen. Pause with me for one quick second. If you're locked into this story right now, hit the like button. It tells the algorithm you want more stories like this, and it helps the channel a lot. And comment below, do you think Thayer is genuine, or do you think he's being guided by people around him? All right, back to it, because the ride home is where the pressure really starts to show. Celestine stood near the fountain when I came outside, her gold dress catching the estate lights like she wanted to be seen. She slid into the seat beside me and shut the door with controlled force. There you are, she said. I've been texting you. Sorry, my phone was on silent. Where did you go? Her eyes scanned my face. 1 minute you were near dessert, and the next you vanished. I had a story ready. I was exploring and got turned around. The place is huge. Celestine stared at me for a long beat. You have that look. What look? The one you get when you're keeping something from me. My stomach tightened. I'm not. We agreed, she said, voice soft but firm. No secrets, not in this room. Her hand closed around mine, too tight to be comforting. Then she let go and pulled out her phone, flipping the mood like a switch. Look. She scrolled through photos, her with a senator, her with a tech founder, her with a woman whose face I'd seen on a magazine cover in line at the grocery store. She looked normal, social, successful, like this night had gone exactly as planned. But her eyes kept sliding back to me, like she could smell the truth on my skin. He talked to me, Celestine said casually, as if she was mentioning the weather. Who? Thayer Blackwood. She said his name like it belonged in her mouth. We spoke near the bar, she continued. My father's company and the Blackwoods have history, old deals, old favors. He remembered me. From where? A Christmas party when I was 16. Her gaze went distant. Manhattan, their penthouse. He was intense even then. I kept my face still, but something ugly moved inside me. What did you think of him? I asked. Celestine's expression sharpened. There's something underneath, something lonely. Yes, I thought. I saw it too. It draws people in, she said quietly. Makes them want to be the one who changes him, the one he chooses for real. Her eyes turned to me, direct, assessing, and in that moment, I understood we had both felt the same pull. We had both seen the same crack, and neither of us wanted to admit what that meant. The car rolled through the city, lights streaking across the windows. Celestine kept talking, names, connections, plans, dropping them with effortless precision, like she was laying down a path only she could see. I nodded in the right places, but my mind kept returning to Thayer's library, to his mother reading aloud, to the way he looked at me when he said I didn't pretend. Celestine knew his world, its families, its deals, its invisible rules, but I had been invited into something private, and the tension between those facts sat between us like a live wire. When we reached the dorm, Celestine smiled sweetly. Get some sleep, she said. Big week ahead. She walked inside without looking back, and I stood outside for a second too long, realizing with a cold certainty that whatever we were, friends, roommates, allies, there were limits, and we were approaching them fast. The executive floor smelled like expensive coffee and controlled panic. I arrived at 8:47 a.m., 13 minutes early, wearing the only blazer I owned and pretending my hands weren't shaking. The receptionist's polite smile tightened when she saw me. "This meeting is for senior directors." I was invited by... "Let her through," a voice said. A silver-haired man approached, eyes cold. "Marcus Chen, Ku." His gaze flicked over me like a stain. "You must be the intern. Zarina Mendoza." He gestured toward the conference room. "Don't speak unless asked." Inside, 12 senior directors sat around a table that looked like it belonged in a private jet showroom. Watches flashed. Suits fit perfectly. Expressions said the same thing. She doesn't belong here. Then Thayer walked in. The room straightened, like it had been commanded by gravity. His eyes found mine immediately. "Good morning," he said. "Before we begin, I want to introduce someone. This is Zarina Mendoza. She'll be joining our strategic analysis team." A low ripple of reaction moved through the room. Marcus Chen tried to interrupt. "With respect, this meeting contains..." "Zarina," Thayer said calmly, cutting him off without raising his voice. "Walk us through the Singapore optimization, the methodology you developed." Every eye turned to me. My throat tightened, but somewhere in my memory, my grandmother's voice held steady. "Don't be small." I stood, and I began. I didn't perform. I presented. Data, method, results. I answered questions cleanly. I held my ground when a director tried to corner me. I corrected a flawed assumption without apologizing for it. When I finished, the room was quiet in a new way. Not contempt. Calculation. Respect they didn't want to give but couldn't deny. A woman with cropped grey hair nodded once. "Impressive." Marcus Chen's mouth tightened. "Where did you study?" "State school. Full scholarship." "And you built this yourself?" "Yes." Thayer didn't smile, not openly, but his eyes warmed when they met mine. Afterward, business cards appeared in my hands. Questions followed me down the hall. People who hadn't looked at me twice now wanted to know what else I could do. And I walked back to my desk feeling something dangerous. Validation, the kind that makes you forget people might be clapping because they want to own you. The late nights started with work and ended with something else. A projection question that turned into a debate that turned into midnight that turned into 2 in the morning with only the city lights watching. Thayer never touched me, but the way he looked at me felt like touch, like he was waiting at the edge of a line he didn't want to cross too soon. "Why do you work so hard?" I asked him one night. He didn't answer immediately. Then, quietly, "Because if I stop, I'll have to think about everything I've lost." "My parents," he said later, voice controlled. "And then my brother. Ransom." His jaw tightened. "A story for another night, or never." "You don't talk?" 4 years of silence. He stared at the glass. He blames me. Or himself. I can't tell which is worse. It was the first time I understood that his wealth wasn't armor. It was a cage lined with expectations. And I was sitting inside it with him, listening to a man who had everything tell me he felt hollow. It happened close to midnight on a Thursday when exhaustion stripped away our careful masks. "Tell me something that doesn't hurt," Thayer said. I looked up from my laptop. "What?" "Something light," he said. "Something real." I thought of the first night, the dessert table, the way everything felt watched. "You know what's funny?" I said. "Those profiteroles were supposed to be the best thing there, and I barely tasted them. I was too nervous, too distracted." His mouth tilted. "So I owe you a proper one. Is that a promise?" "It's a plan," he murmured. He stepped closer, close enough that my breath caught. The air between us tightened, charged with something that no spreadsheet could explain. "Soon," he said, and the word sounded like a door opening. The job offer came on the last Friday of August. Real, full-time, a salary that made my throat close when I read it. I called my grandmother first. She cried so hard she had to stop and breathe. That evening, another envelope waited for me. Thick cardstock, clean handwriting. Dinner, tonight. Wear something you wouldn't wear to the office. Not work. Not a meeting. Dinner. I changed outfits 4 times and still felt wrong in all of them. I finally chose a wine-red dress that made me look like someone who didn't apologize for taking up space. Celestine wasn't home. Again, another networking event, another late hour. I ignored the uneasy feeling and walked out into the night with my heart pounding like I was heading toward a cliff. The restaurant had no sign. Inside, candlelight and quiet money filled the room. The staff knew his name without him saying it, but the luxury wasn't what stayed with me. The conversation was, "I need you to know the truth," Thea said after the first course. "Before this goes further." He told me about the yacht trip, how it was meant to be family bonding and became something else. He spoke about tension between his father and Ransom, about arguments that never resolved, about a storm that arrived faster than anyone predicted. "My parents were on deck," he said, voice hollow, "and then they were gone." I held my breath. "Ransom was found 6 hours later," he continued. "Alive, silent. He's never told anyone what happened in the final moments, what was said, what he saw." "He blames you? Or himself?" His jaw tightened. "I can't tell which poison he chose." "Do you blame yourself?" His eyes met mine. "Every day." I reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers were cold at first, then tightened around mine like he needed the contact to stay upright. "You're the first person I've told," he said softly. "Why me?" "Because you don't pretend," he replied. "You looked at me like I was just a person." The word person sounded like relief on his tongue. "Is that what we are?" I asked, voice barely steady. "Friends?" His gaze dropped to my mouth. "No," he said. "Not friends." He stood and pulled me up with him, hands firm on my waist. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. "And I will." I should have stopped him, but I didn't. I kissed him, soft at first, like a question. Then his restraint broke, and the kiss deepened into something consuming, like he'd been starving and didn't want to admit it. The rest of the night blurred into warmth, confession, closeness that felt like truth, and I didn't see the trap closing. I woke in sheets that felt like water against my skin. Morning light filled the penthouse. The city below looked small, like a toy world. For one perfect moment, nothing existed but peace. Then my phone buzzed. "Celestine, we need to talk, now. It's important." I stared at the screen, a cold knot forming. Before I could respond, the shower stopped. Thea walked out with a towel around his waist, hair damp, eyes warmer than I'd ever seen them. "Good morning," he said, smiling. "I believe I owe you a proper profiterole." I tried to smile back, pushing the knot down. He sat beside me, taking my hand. "There's something you should know," he said, expression sharpening. "The board has been pushing hard for a marriage, a strategic alliance with the right family." My stomach tightened. "And you?" "I've been refusing." His thumb stroked my knuckles. "I wanted something real." He leaned in, voice low. "Now I want you." And for a moment, I let myself believe the future could be simple. If you're still here, you already know this isn't going to stay sweet. Share this video with a friend who loves a story that turns on a dime. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because the next part is where the floor drops out. All right, let's finish it. I returned to the dorm carrying leftover warmth like it could protect me. I rehearsed a calm explanation for Celestine in my head, something simple, something vague. But when I opened the door, she was waiting, sitting on her bed, back straight, hands folded, face blank, not relaxed. "Prepared. Close the door," she said. I did. "I know where you were," she continued, voice flat. "I know who you were with." My heart stumbled. "Celestine." "I know," she cut in, "because I was supposed to be the one he chose." The words didn't land right. My brain rejected them. What are you talking about? That dinner, that penthouse. Her eyes stayed locked on mine. That life. I don't understand. Celestine stood and walked to her desk. A thick folder sat there like it had been waiting for me to come home and break. She picked it up and held it out. "Read," she said. "Then tell me if you still don't understand." My hands shook as I took it. The air felt thin, like the room had decided there wasn't enough oxygen for what was about to happen. The folder was full of legal documents, printed emails, glossy photos, and financial charts that made my vision blur. Strategic alliance, merger terms, projected valuation. Then I found the page meant to kill me. A marriage agreement. The names were there, Celestine Montgomery and Thea Blackwood III. My throat closed. "This says..." My voice cracked. Celestine's expression didn't change. "Our families finalized it 3 days ago. Lawyers, board members, everyone who thinks they own him." I stared harder. There were signatures. Montgomery Council, board representatives. Not his. Not yet. And still, the date for the ceremony was typed in clean, confident ink. 3 days from now. "Thea didn't tell you," Celestine said softly. "The way you might speak to someone you're about to step on." Of course he didn't. He's been fighting it for years, but they're tightening the pressure. They'll force his hand. My mind tried to reconcile her words with his. He said he was refusing. She was saying they were moving forward anyway. "Thea Blackwood is my fiancée," she added, like she could make it true just by saying it. "That's what the arrangement calls me. That's what the announcement will call me." She tilted her head, which makes last night messy. The world tipped. I grabbed the edge of my desk to stay upright. Celestine's triumph wore a mask of pity, and somehow that made it worse. "He says a lot of things," Celestine continued. "He tells women what they want to hear when he's lonely." My chest burned. "The ceremony is in 3 days," she said. "Small, controlled, family and a few board members. No press until after." She walked to the door, pausing like she wanted the last word to echo. "You are always going to be temporary, Zarina," she said. "Girls like us, girls who have to claw for everything, we don't get to keep the princes." Her eyes glittered. "We get to borrow them long enough to learn what we're worth." Then she left. The door closed with a quiet click, and the silence after it was brutal. My phone buzzed. "Thea, last night was everything. We need to talk about the future." The words blurred behind sudden tears, because I didn't know if I'd been loved or used, and I didn't know which hurt more. Time passed strangely after that. My tears dried, my breathing slowed, and something colder took over. I stared at the folder again, not as a heartbroken woman, as an analyst. Something about Celestine's timing felt too clean, too rehearsed, like she'd been waiting to deliver this blow at the exact second it would do the most damage. I dug deeper into the folder, flipping past the pages she wanted me to focus on. And, near the back, I found what she didn't. A list, women's names, photos, background notes. My name was there, circled in red, dated 6 months before the Blackwood invitation ever touched my door. My blood went cold, because suddenly, this wasn't just betrayal. It was design. And if I was on a list, then none of this had been an accident. I spread every page across my bed. The list wasn't casual. It was clinical. 10 women, each with a profile, academic strengths, emotional vulnerabilities, family background, control risk, public exposure risk. My entry read, high talent, limited social safety net, ambitious, isolated, suitable for targeted attachment. I felt nauseous. Next, email correspondence between Gerald Montgomery and a Blackwood board member. They discussed timeline, placement, monitoring. One line punched the air from my lungs. Ensure housing keeps them together. Proximity is critical for oversight. Not placed as roommates, kept that way. Guided, managed. Then I found a document outlining the purpose. Celestine was always the intended bride. The merger was the goal. But Thea was the problem. He'd resisted control, rejected matches, refused to play along. So they needed leverage. They needed proof that he could be misled into choosing the wrong woman, someone without the right background, so the board could point to it as evidence that he needed supervision. A wife with handlers, a marriage that came with strings attached. And I, talented, hungry, unprotected, was the test. If he fell for me, they could label him unstable, impulsive, unfit to choose, and then push him into Celestine's arms under the banner of stability. The last page stopped my heart. A photograph. Ransom Blackwood shaking hands with Gerald Montgomery in a private office. Timestamp. 3 weeks ago. Thea's estranged brother wasn't distant. He was involved. And whatever happened on that yacht, whatever truth lived under the official story, had never stopped moving. It had simply been waiting. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the evidence like it was a mirror. I wasn't chosen because I was lucky. I was chosen because I was useful. They had studied me, measured me, decided I would be easy to steer and easy to discard. No wealthy parents to call lawyers, no family name to trigger consequences, no safety net. But I also had something they needed, the ability to genuinely reach Thea, to become real to him, because that's what made the plan work. If he truly cared, then the board could weaponize it. Look at him, they could say. Look who he chose. He can't be trusted. He needs guidance. Then the solution arrives, Celestine, the perfect match, the approved partner. The merger dressed up as romance. And suddenly, Thea becomes manageable, controlled through marriage, controlled through a family that already had a hand inside his company. I thought of the late nights, his confessions, the grief in his eyes when he spoke about his brother. I didn't believe that pain was fake, but I did believe people around him were using it, and they had used me as the trigger. The anger that rose in my chest wasn't loud. It was focused, cold, the kind of anger that builds plans instead of tears. I could walk away, take my job, protect my career, let the powerful destroy each other while I stayed silent and survived. I could warn Thea, hand him the documents, and hope he believed me fast enough to stop a ceremony scheduled in 3 days. Or I could do something else, something they didn't expect. I gathered every page, organized them, photographed key sections, and saved backups. I made a clean packet, proof that could be verified, not just emotion that could be dismissed. Then I called Thea. He answered quickly, voice warm. "Zarina, we need to meet," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Now. And you need to hear what I'm about to tell you before anyone else gets to you." A pause. The warmth vanished into alertness. "What happened?" "I found documents about you, about Celestine, about the board, about your brother." Silence. Then, low, "Where are you?" I gave him a location that wasn't his home, wasn't my dorm, and wasn't anywhere either of us had history. Neutral ground. When I hung up, I looked around the room, the same room where an envelope had started all of this. I had been treated like a piece on someone else's board. Not anymore. If they wanted a game, they were about to meet a player. Thea read the packet in silence. Not the quick skim of a man who thinks he already knows the answer, the deep reading of a man realizing his life has been managed from the shadows of his own boardroom. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said quietly, "I knew something was wrong. I just couldn't see the shape of it." What happened next moved fast and slow at the same time. Fast, the ceremony was stopped. The public announcement never happened. Thea confronted his board, demanded resignations, and took back control with a precision that reminded me why people feared him. Slow, investigations, audits, legal fights that took months to untangle. Ransom's involvement came out in pieces, meetings, money trails, quiet alliances. Not a simple confession, not a clean ending. Just the ugly reality of power games that don't stop just because someone finally tells the truth. The merger collapsed. Celestine's family lost influence. Allies disappeared. Doors closed. Blackwood Industries restructured on Thea's terms. As for me and Thea, some stories don't end with a wedding. We didn't rush into a fairy tale. We built something slower. Trust rebuilt brick by brick, truth tested repeatedly. We worked together as equals, and in a world that sells illusion as romance, that was the rarest ending of all. So, what does this teach us? First, not everyone who smiles at you is your friend. Some people gather your secrets like tools. They learn what hurts you so they can use it later. Second, know your worth and never let anyone convince you that your background makes you less than. Where you come from is not a weakness, it's proof you know how to survive. Zarina's grandmother carried that truth across an ocean. She built a future with tired hands and stubborn faith. That kind of strength doesn't disappear just because someone rich tries to rebrand you as disposable. Third, truth is worth telling, even when it's terrifying. Silence feels safer, but it's also how people keep controlling the story. And finally, lies dressed in luxury are still lies. The wrapper doesn't change what's inside. Remember that. And don't let anyone make you forget who you are. And that, beautiful people, is the weight of silk and secrets. If this story hit you, share it with someone who loves a twist they won't see coming. You never know who needs a reminder to trust their instincts. Drop a comment. What would you have done in Zarina's position? Expose everything, or walk away and protect your future? And if you're not subscribed yet, join us. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because there are more stories coming that will keep you listening all the way to the last line. Until next time, trust wisely, love carefully, and never let anyone convince you you're disposable. This is Empire of Lies. See you in the next one.